I struggle with schizophrenia, and my sister-in-law constantly whispers to push me over the edge. My wife takes her side. I've lived with schizophrenia for years, and most of the time I manage it pretty well. Medication, therapy, routines, those things keep my life stable. There are good days and harder days, but overall I've learned how to live with it. Then my sister-in-law moved into our house. At first it seemed like a temporary arrangement. Her name was Lena, and my wife Emily said she just needed a place to stay. While she figured some things out after a breakup, I didn't mind. Family helps family, right? But after a couple weeks, something started happening that I couldn't explain. Whenever Lena was nearby, I would hear whispers, not loud voices, not clear sentences, just quiet murmurs, like someone speaking under their breath. Barely loud enough to notice. The first few times it happened, I brushed it off. Living with schizophrenia means you learn not to panic at every strange sensation. Sometimes your brain just plays tricks. But what bothered me was the pattern. The whispers only happened when Lena was around. If she left the room, they stopped. If she left the house, silence. Before she moved in, I hadn't experienced anything like that in a long time. My medication had things under control, so I started wondering, was it really in my head? Sometimes I'd hear her whisper something as she walked past me. When I asked what she said, she'd look confused and reply, "Nothing." I didn't say anything. Then she'd give me this concerned look, the kind of look people give when they think you're fragile. Months went by like that. Quiet murmurs, half-heard words, the feeling that someone was trying to talk just out of earshot. One night it finally got to me. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. It's just the illness, I told myself, but deep down I wasn't sure anymore. A few weeks later, I had another breakdown, worse than the first. That's when I finally told Emily. She listened quietly while I explained everything, the whispers, how they only happened around Lena, how it felt like she was deliberately speaking just quietly, enough to make me question myself. Emily didn't react the way I hoped. Her face filled with worry, but not toward her sister, toward me. "Lena would never do that," she said gently. I knew she meant well, but hearing that made the pit in my stomach grow even deeper. Because if Lena wasn't doing it, then what did that mean? The whispers kept happening. I began paying closer attention to everything Lena did. Sometimes she'd mutter softly to herself while cooking. Other times she'd pause mid-sentence, like she was listening to something nobody else could hear. I started trying to catch actual words. But every time I focused, the whispers would dissolve into nonsense. Emily noticed my behavior changing. I was quieter, more withdrawn, constantly watching Lena like I was studying a puzzle, even though I was taking my medication exactly as prescribed. And seeing my psychiatrist regularly, nothing changed. My doctor adjusted my meds several times. Each change brought hope. Each time the whispers returned. Eventually, the tension in our home became impossible to ignore. Emily felt stuck between us, her husband insisting something strange was happening, and her sister insisting everything was normal. Then one evening, things exploded. I was walking down the hallway when I heard it again. A whisper. But this time it was clearer than ever. It came from the kitchen. My heart started pounding as I turned the corner. There was Lena, standing at the counter with a glass of water like nothing had happened. Something in me snapped. "Just stop!" I shouted. She jumped, startled. "I know you're doing it," I continued. The whispering. The muttering. "Just admit it." Her face immediately crumpled in confusion. "What are you talking about?" she said. Then she started crying. She grabbed her purse and rushed out of the house before I could say another word. The second the door slammed behind her, panic hit me. I knew exactly who she was calling. Emily. My wife hates being interrupted at work. I could only imagine what Lena was telling her. When Emily finally pulled into the driveway later that evening, my stomach was in knots. Lena came back inside with her. Emily sat me down in the living room and asked me to explain everything. I tried. But before I could finish, she raised her hand gently. "Let me speak first." Her voice trembled as she talked about how painful it was to watch me struggle, but how hard it also was to hear accusations against her sister. Behind her, Lena sat on the couch crying and nodding along. I felt like I was losing my mind. I didn't trust myself to speak without yelling, so I stayed quiet. The next day after I calmed down, I tried again to talk to Emily. That's when she suggested something that terrified me. She thought I might need to check into a psychiatric facility for more intensive treatment. Hearing that felt like the floor dropped out beneath me, not because I feared treatment, but because it felt like she had stopped believing me completely. We argued for hours. Eventually, I stopped talking. If she wouldn't believe my words, maybe she'd believe what she could see. Over the next few days, I started paying very close attention to Lena. Most of the time, she acted normal, but occasionally she'd do strange little things, muttering quietly, pausing mid-task, moving her lips without making sound. Whenever those moments happened, I made sure Emily was nearby. I never said anything. I just let her notice. Slowly, I could see doubt creeping into Emily's expression. She started watching, too. That's when I took it one step further. I began recording. Every time Lena did something odd, I discreetly pulled out my phone and filmed. Soon I had several clips. Lena whispering to herself while cooking, stopping suddenly in conversation, staring at nothing like she was listening. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. I had a rough day. The whispers had been constant since I got home. I went into the bathroom to clear my head and set my phone on the counter. I didn't realize it was still recording. While I sat there, the whispering started again. Right outside the door. My chest tightened. It sounded like Lena was standing in the hallway, murmuring directly toward the door. After a few minutes, the whispers stopped. When I stepped out, the hallway was empty. Later that night, out of desperation, I reviewed the recording. And that's when everything changed. The video captured the faint creak of the bathroom door frame. Then a voice, clearer than any whisper I had heard before. It was Lena. She was standing outside the bathroom, whispering. My hands shook as I replayed it again and again. I wasn't imagining it. Someone had actually been trying to make me think I was losing my mind. For the first time in months, I felt relief. Not because of what it meant, but because I finally had proof. Over the next few days, I gathered more recordings. When I felt ready, I showed them to Emily. She watched in silence. Her face slowly drained of color. Clip after clip played, Lena whispering to herself, pausing like she was listening, speaking toward empty space. When the final video ended, the room felt heavy with silence. That night, we called Lena into the living room. Emily spoke first, calmly explaining that we'd noticed some strange behavior and wanted to talk about it. Then I played the recordings. Lena's composure began to crumble. Her hands fidgeted. Her eyes darted around the room. Finally, she broke down. Yes, she admitted it. She had been whispering. Outside the bathroom. In the kitchen. At dinner. All of it. Emily's voice shook as she asked the question we both needed answered. Why? Lena hesitated for a long time before speaking. Then she said something that stunned us. She was afraid of me. She had read about schizophrenia online and convinced herself that living in the same house as me was dangerous. So she tried to manipulate the situation, pushing me toward hospitalization or forcing me to leave. She thought it would make her safer. Emily stared at her in disbelief. Even if Lena had been scared, the way she handled it was cruel beyond words. Trust had been shattered. After a long conversation, Emily made a decision that clearly broke her heart. Lena couldn't stay with us anymore. The next morning we told her. At first she seemed resigned. Then the anger came. She accused us of abandoning her, of using her, of throwing her away like her ex-boyfriend had. Emily stayed calm, though I could see how much it hurt her. The decision didn't change. An hour later, Lena stormed upstairs and started packing. The house was painfully quiet as she gathered her things. When she finally left, Emily walked her to the door. She tried to hug her sister. Lena shoved her aside. Before leaving, she looked directly at me with cold eyes and mouthed something I couldn't quite make out. Then she slammed the door behind her. For the first time in months, the house was silent. Not the suffocating silence I had grown used to, a peaceful one. Emily and I spent the following weeks rebuilding our trust, focusing on healing from everything that had happened. And Lena? Emily cut off contact completely. Some wounds take time to heal, and some people don't deserve a second chance. If this story kept you listening all the way through, share your thoughts below and stick around, because sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that actually happened.